Welcome to My on Mondays, an explorative approach to the possessive my through narratives, art, and sound. Each Monday brings a new creation and unique perspective. My on Mondays is brought to you by Ming Studios, a contemporary art space and international artist residency program dedicated to the exhibition, experience, and exploration of arts and culture. Along with exhibiting artists from around the world, Ming also serves the community by hosting innovative programs including performances, workshops, screenings, readings, artist talks, and other cultural activities. For more information, or if you'd like to participate in My on Mondays, you can visit our website at mingstudios.org. Hello and welcome to our 160th episode of My on Mondays. Today we have another episode by our three angsty poets, Tomas Baiza, Rebecca Evans, and Christian Winn, who once again gathered initially to chat about poetry, but the chatting turned to ranting, then the ranting turned to humor and maybe a bit of angst. The holiday pressure surfaced and they found themselves swallowed into the lights, the carols, the Scrooges, and gimmicks. Episode 9, My Angst on Holiday Lit, brings their discussion on holidays, traditions, and sticking with their virtues. Tomas Baiza is originally from San Jose, California, and now finds himself in Boise, Idaho. He's the author of the novel Delivery, A Pocho's Accidental Guide to College, Love, and Pizza Delivery, published by Running Wild Press in 2023, and the mixed genre collection A Purpose to Our Savagery from Rise Press. Delivery was selected as the 2024 Treasure Valley Reads featured novel, and Tomas's writing has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, the Best of the Net, and Best American Short Stories anthologies. Tomas has fenced in Italy, been rescued by a helicopter from the Sierra Nevada, fended off wild dogs while hitchhiking in rural Morelos, Mexico, and once delivered a dozen pizzas to a Klingon-themed orgy at a sci-fi convention. When he's not writing, Tomas is running trails or obsessing over bonsai trees. Rebecca Evans writes the difficult, the heartful, the guidebooks for survivors. Her work has appeared in Narratively, The Rumpus, Brevity, and more. She's earned 2 MFAs, one in creative nonfiction, the other in poetry from the University of Nevada, Reno at Lake Tahoe. She's authored a full-length poetry collection, Tangled by Blood, published by Moontide Press in 2023, and her second poetry book, Safe Handling, was just published this year. She shares space in a tiny Idaho town with her sons and 4 Newfoundlands. Christian Winn is a fiction writer, poet, nonfiction writer, teacher of creative writing, and producer of literary and storytelling events based in Boise, Idaho. He's the author of 2 story collections, Naked Me and What's Wrong with You is What's Wrong with Me, and the forthcoming novels Crocodile and My History with Careless People and Other Stories. His work has appeared in McSweeney's, Plowshares, the Chicago Tribune's Printers Row Journal, Glimmer Train, Joyland, Expat Press, Tri-Quarterly, Gulf Coast, and many other fine magazines and journals. And from 2016 to 2019, he was the Idaho Writer-in-Residence, the state's highest literary honor.
Welcome to our 9th Angsty show. We're 3 angsty poets, which includes myself, Tomas Baiza, along with Rebecca Evans and Christian Winn. Today, we're talking about our angst with Holiday Lit. Though I think this includes an array of holiday indulgences like flicks, office parties, uncomfortable gatherings, and a general overindulgence. Christian, would you please get us started?
Okay, well, welcome. Good to see you guys.
We're great to see you.
Zooming today from various. Well, I'm south where it's a little warmer, and you guys were expressing angst over that in cold Boise, and
you weren't allowed to talk about it anymore.
Well, it's so
go
nice.
ahead, say it on the air.
No, but that said, yeah, the holidays are upon us. Tomorrow, as we record this, is Thanksgiving. We had ideas about doing this show. If you listened to our last episode, we were going to do it a little earlier, but something, the election, that's what happened. Yeah. So we decided not to get into the holidays just yet.
And we got into politics instead. Yeah.
We did,
Yeah,
which
that's
was
what happened.
awesome, but also
Which
really
was
well, like as angsty as we've been. But yeah,
was
I mean,
therapeutic.
I know therapeutic. Sure, it was only a couple days after the election, and as we recorded, and you put that episode out fast too, by the way. Good turnaround,
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yeah. You're
Both
welcome.
Rebeccas. But yeah, that was thank you, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about as far as just our experience with the holidays, in literature. I have some short stories that I particularly love. I'll bring up in a bit, but I'll keep it kind of quick on my end to start us out. But I do have a soft spot for films like, It's a Wonderful Life, and the traditions around, like Miracle on 34th Street, or just watching, the Peanuts special back in the day, or Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas is one of my favorites. It was like a Jim Henson joint that was kind of this undersung, sort of puppeted Christmas special about a jug band. And Emmett Otter was this cute little furry dude I loved as a kid, but there is a lot of angst too. I'm gonna say probably my just biggest annoyance is the Christmas music. I gotta say that starts early, and it just is incessant, and you're in like the mall by accident sometime, like or you're just
By
walking around.
accident.
And why am I like a little irritated? Why? There's all this stuff like in the white noise of your life because it's holiday. So that's my biggest like singular, just an entity, because there's some great short stories, kind of, and great films so much around Christmas or just involve Christmas in some way. It's kind of some horror films. And I figured, yeah, Thanksgiving wise, I do really enjoy the tradition of that, and I've got kind of a soft spot for the stuffing and the turkey and the gravy, and the mythology around the pilgrims and the native, not the best. I did listen to an interesting podcast the other day about the origins of actual Christmas as a national holiday that sort of happened right after the Civil War. I did not know that, so it became a national holiday then. But then the mythology kind of took got revved up real nicely. But so I'm not really coming to a point of angst so much. It's just we're in it, and there are things I love and things I dislike. My favorite Christmas movie is definitely not a Christmas movie, which is It's a Wonderful Life, and I love it because it's not a Christmas movie. It ends on Christmas, but it's about suicide attempts. It's about the Depression. It's about American capitalism. It's about socialism winning. Potter goes down in the end. Nobody likes Potter. He's the big, sort of slumlord, basically. Levittown sort of building, sort of early 20th century mogul, I suppose.
He's the oligarch.
He is the oligarch. There you go. But I
Mhm.
just love it because it's not, and the best, stories and films and novels or anything involving the holidays, I feel like are the ones that, of course, aren't like on the nose, that are just about the window of time between, December 20th and New Year, or just set around New Year, or just set around Thanksgiving. But I love that film, just because it's a little sentimental and it's become something, but it's not what you expect when you rewatch it. If you haven't watched it in a while, it's sad. It's not the best. Jimmy Stewart, and Donna Reed, right? Yes, she's
Oh
the
yeah, Donna Reed.
Mary, and is very sweet. And yeah, George tries to kill himself, and so
Paints a pretty grim picture of librarians too.
that's true. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, who would
Yeah.
ever want to become a librarian unless all of your dreams were dashed and you just go off into spinsterhood?
That's true. Oh, that's true.
Which was
Yes.
common,
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't know. So there's my little take on my favorite holiday movie, but there's so many movies I have written down here, and then I won't get into my short story picks yet, but I don't know. Rebecca, what's your take? As a Jewish American, I was looking up some cool
Yeah.
Hanukkah movies, and also sort of your traditions around that would be interesting to get to, I think, too.
I was at one point in my life, I was going to celebrate all the cultures, right? Because we do in my home a secular Easter where I set up a scavenger hunt for the baskets with threads tied throughout the house, and my son's army crawl following their thread to the basket. The puppies get tangled up. I've been doing it since they could crawl. And then on the table is a huge scene with dead peepers, the little
Uh-huh.
marshmallow. So I usually have them torn up. Sometimes it's Transformers or dinosaurs with bloody frosting everywhere. There's a fight scene and they never fare well. And I have like so much fun. And the same with Christmas. It's secular. I could go into what we do there. And of course Hanukkah and Passover, Pesach, and um, all the Jewish cultural ones that are really dear to me is like, we should do Kwanzaa. Like, let's just like all of December, be a party. Like, why not? And I mean, I guess the thing for me is like you get to decide how you want to celebrate life every day, right? What becomes special or tradition. Um, so for me, like I was thinking literature initially. I do like the Christmas story and the BB gun and the whole thing, and that's kind of a tradition. And we watch Polar Express. My sons love that show, and so that became kind of a tradition too. But Fiddler on the Roof became a tradition. Christmas movie, so horribly haunting and sad. And and I think like there's just this blend for me, like the challenge I have is it's either really saccharine and sappy and sentimental, or it's horrible and sad. When I say horrible, I don't mean like not well written or well filmed. I mean it's like heartbreaking, depressing. And the first, I love Thomas Hardy, so the first one I think of is Far from a Maddening Crowd, and just it's almost like Romeo and Juliet, where like this guy she thinks he's dead, but Sheba thinks he's dead. He's not dead. She shows up in morning clothes for the party, and he's not really dead, but she agrees to marry someone else because in 6 years, I think, and then he ends up showing up and the guy kills him and that's going to marry. I mean, like it becomes this really convoluted thing. And I feel like a lot of holiday um, themes fall around that. And I think maybe because the holidays are so hard for everyone. Um, I was thinking also of Tobias's Wolf, This Boy's Life, right? Which revolves a little bit around Christmas, and it's so sad. Like it's so hard, right? And is it Dwight? That's his stepfather, who's just horrible. So, the whole thing, like what happens when like Christmas is just over, everything's just like a big fight, and it is hard. Emma, Jane Austen's book, Wuthering Heights, Emily Bronte, like all these really hard stories around despair seem to fall right around Christmas because I think we feel a lot of sadness and despair, right? Or it's super sappy and just completely unrealistic, and everyone falls happily in love at the end in the most unpredictable way, and the horrible guy turns into, the unexpected hero of the story. And it's like, that doesn't happen, right? So yeah, Tomas, what about you? That's my take.
Yeah.
Growing up, for me, growing up in California, Christmas was something that happened on the calendar, but all of its popular media depictions were from another world. I didn't grow up amongst snow drifts and snow days and sleds and winter caps. So Christmas was always something that you saw on television that looked a certain way, but it that's not how I grew up. And I mean, this obviously isn't news for anybody, but during this holiday, when you're supposed to be reflecting these values that everyone's agreed are part of the holiday, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, it seems like that's when the family dysfunction flares the most. And so growing up as a kid, I always thought, okay, Christmas is this weird thing. When I see it on TV, that's not what's going on here. And when I see all these happy people sitting around turkeys, just enjoying one another's company and human goodwill, I'm like, that ain't my family at all. And so there was just this strange sense of dysphoria between what the holidays were supposed to be and how they were actually working out. And holidays, as I came to understand them as a young kid, seeing them on television, were very American. And half of my family was, and the other half of my family was aggressively not. And so it wasn't really clear how I was supposed to reflect that. I mean, I was fine opening gifts, but as I got older, it was pretty hard for me to sort of adopt all the trappings of what you're supposed to do as a man during the holiday season. And so it's still kind of a strange experience for me. Um, I like It's a Wonderful Life because for me, it's really not about, it happens during the holidays, but it's not about the holidays. It's about, I feel like it's about the pressures placed on humans during the holidays when all of the other stuff that's going on really come into play, like the politics and the interpersonal dynamics and things like that. So I do love that movie. If there's a piece of literature that I love that is about the holidays, it's got to be Sedaris' Santaland.
I was going to bring that up.
Oh
That
my
is
God, I forgot about that
hands
one.
down
It's
my
so
absolute
good.
favorite
Yeah.
treatment of Christmas. Because again, although it is ostensibly about Christmas, really it is about a miserable human being indulging in their miserableness during Christmas. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
I think you hit on
Absolutely.
something, Tomas, like you know how we watch or read about baseball when it's not about baseball, and we
Yeah.
read about Christmas, it's not about Christmas, you know, and
Yeah.
Christmas, you know, the holiday, whatever it is, Hanukkah, solstice,
Mm.
like whatever it is that you want to look at, it feels like a catalyst for this dark, you know, spectrum that we as humans, especially our social demographic in Western, you know,
Right.
go ahead.
No, I
Go ahead,
agree. Yeah,
Christian.
I
Yeah.
would say, yeah, well, these communal holidays, I mentioned like when Thanksgiving, became a national holiday, it was, a thing that was supposed to kind of unify the idea would unify the American, sort of folks around, post-Civil War. But yeah, like they have their big expectations, like they come along with these, like everybody has somebody on Christmas, right? And if maybe if you don't, or maybe if you're struggling, or same thing with like New Year's or Thanksgiving, just to throw a little levity in, planes, trains, and automobiles. Oh my gosh, that's such a good, sort of, the John Candy character. He's just this lonely guy who's making up this story about his wife. He's always supposedly calling home and
Yeah.
passed
Yeah.
away, some time ago. It's like, it's a slapstick comedy in some ways with Steve Martin and him, but it's just like, yeah, it's like that. I don't know. I mean, it can be a really profoundly lonely time because it is a communal notion we have around it. And just
And
the
if you're in the space of not having funds, I mean, there were, you know, several years in a row where me and my sons were really impoverished, and
mm,
trying to help them feel as if they weren't missing out. It was such a stressful time. I mean, Hanukkah is 8 days of gifts, guys, and and they're
I remember
like,
being jealous
and
of
it,
my friends or the
right,
hermits across the
and
world.
then if you're doing both Hanukkah and Christmas, it's a lot. And there was one year Hanukkah was the same week of Thanksgiving, so we did Hanukkah. This year, Hanukkah falls right along Christmas, and trying to come up with ways to um you know, repurpose so many things so that they felt like they were being gifted,
Yeah.
you know, and not left out, right? And that type of pressure, you know, parents put on themselves, or you know, couples put on themselves for each other, like the whole gift giving thing turns into this monetary exchange that has nothing to do with what any of the holidays are about, right? At
My
the end
my
of the day.
activist single mother who
I
who
love her already.
just
Yeah.
fought who just fought to get us to like the bottom rung of the struggling middle class every year. It seemed like, and she would do it in a different way, but every year she would look at me while she was going through all the pre-Thanksgiving stress and just look at me and go, this whole thing's a fucking farce, right? It was all a performance. For her, it was all a performance. And that's kind of how I came to understand the holidays. And now that, I'm a father, I'm trying really hard to adopt a different approach, but I can never completely get rid of this idea that there's the ideal of the holiday, and then there's how it really works out. And to me, it's not so much about enjoying the ideal, it's making sure that it's not a nightmare because it's not the ideal.
That's a
Yeah.
beautiful way of
Yeah.
saying it. And you do get to make it whatever you want,
Yeah, you
right?
can.
It is your home. Like your home is your own culture, however you want to mesh and merge, and shift your tradition,
Yeah,
if you
cynicism
guys want to
doesn't need
steal
to
my
ruin it.
if
Right.
you guys want to, steal my murderous peeps
I know.
scenes for
I was gonna
Easter,
say, I was trying to think of, yeah, what we've done over the years. I mean, we would do like, I was young and my parents were, just coming out of living in, sort of like, you know, Eastern Oregon, central Eastern Oregon, kind of like fairly rural lives and not, making their way into scratching away. We get the popcorn out, do the popcorn threads or make these janky little gingerbread houses or kind of get the clay out and make little ornaments and stuff like that. And the little shrinky dinks too, those were pretty fun. But
oh yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then but yeah, just the
Forgot
small
about Shrinky Dinks.
yeah, the shrinky dink ornaments. So you put them in you paint them a little and then you put them in the oven and they shrink and they're shrinky dinks. But yeah, just the small things, and I try to like, do some of that stuff with my friends over the years, but it's gotten more and more materialistic around, sort of with my niece and my nephew and my folks, and it's expectations get a little high for the youngsters around here these days in my life, but try to treat them well. But yeah, I don't know, Tomas, what were like traditional things that you did at all? Like, did your mom kind of come up with like crafty things or kind of like around the house decor stuff?
Get his face. If you guys could
No.
see, I just want to describe because we're, audio only. So this inquisitive look, one eyebrow up that only Tomas can do, right? The other eyebrow pointing down and inward. It's a little Grinch-ish, if I must
That's
say.
true. That was a Grinch
Yeah.
thing.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it was a Grinch face. Go ahead, Tomas. Answer the question. Yeah.
No,
Oh
there was a
no.
Christmas
A
tree.
tree.
And
Okay.
my mom did indulge in the Christmas tree. Um, and she did make sure that there were some Mexican themed decorations on it. But in terms of like doilies around the house or lights or stuff like that, no,
Doilies.
no,
No. Okay. That's probably
no.
best. Yeah.
The Christmas box in the garage consisted of lights for the tree, a big gaudy tin star, like
Oh
just
yeah.
screams Christmas Charlie Brown. Um, and then a handful of actually kind of nice ornaments, which I still have, which I think we got in Mexico, and then that was it. That was pretty much it. That was enough.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
ironic thing in my house is one room, the front living room area is pagan Christmas. And the decorations are ornaments I bought while in Germany when I was stationed in England. And the room over, which is kind of like the dining area thing gathering, is Hanukkah. And that's all like blue and silver. And, we play dreidel and all the stuff in there, right? So there's two separate rooms, but here's, the
Hmm.
pagan Christmas, secular Christmas, and then you walk into the next room and it's all Hanukkah stuff.
I know that is an interesting sort of dichotomy to have a good friend, our good friend Larry, friend of the podcast here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Larry Rosen, and he's married to a Gentile. But he very much has
The
always
Goya.
the Goya, yes. But he loves. I mean, they love celebrate Christmas and blend Hanukkah and Christmas. And his
Yeah, it's
son,
super fun.
yeah, Ali, sort of they. So it is interesting in growing up, in the Bay Area with a number of Jewish families around. It was kind of like Christmas does get celebrated, in this kind of way. So what is I'm curious on you like for you growing up, Rebecca, like that blend of like the holidays are kind of, I mean, there's got to be hardcore, traditionalists in the Jewish culture that don't even get close to Christmas, I would
Oh
think.
yeah. Well, I grew up confused, is what I like to say,
Okay.
because my
Okay.
mother never really told me we were Jewish, right? I went to like a church camp and we went to Christian stuff. But I wasn't allowed to eat bacon because she swore it would turn my blood black. Um,
Okay. It might be
I
true.
didn't know why. But of course, as soon as I went to lunch, because I won a lunch with my teacher in fourth grade, I got a BLT and tasted bacon. I didn't care and I loved it.
Bring it on.
Um, yeah, so we knew where I was going to go. Um, anyway, but in Jewish culture, there's every level, like every culture, there are hardcore, extremely observant Orthodox, that only celebrate the tradition of Jewish holidays. And then there's everything over on, another spectrum of extremely liberal, embrace a little bit of everything, right? Culture, there's everything in between. It's the same with Pesach, because traditional Orthodox Jewish culture can feel very patriarchal. So there's a lot of more feminist liberal movements with female leaders, so it's everything in between. I mean, you get a taste and a variety of everything, and it just doesn't matter, I think. And what I love is there's no push in Jewish culture to push the way I look at it onto you. We're big debaters and we like a
Mhm.
good debate. And I want to hear about the way you think. And they usually want to hear about the way I think. And I really love that level of respect that happens. You get to be whoever you are, and however you do it is fine. Like there's none of that. It's just really interesting to see you go to someone's house and it's like, whoa, you go to someone else's house, it's completely different. And they could be siblings, like it doesn't matter, you know. My
Mhm.
cousin is a Messianic Jew, so he's actually a pastor in a Christian church that
Mhm.
follows the Torah, right? And it's like this whole layer of thing. So
Mhm.
yeah. So it's kind of everywhere, all over the place. But I think what's difficult is when you're raising children, they don't get the same excitement over their culture if you're not Christian in the Christmas culture, right? In
Mhm.
America. No
Right.
matter what other culture you experience, like Tomas, for you, you have this beautiful Mexican culture and it's not embedded in the Christmas, traditional American Christmas tradition, right? So all the other cultures kind of get left out of this national holiday. And I think that's what's really interesting to me, Muslim, like all the other cultures, like why aren't those national holidays? We could get
Right.
into it. Why don't
Yeah.
we have 8 days of Hanukkah off? I'm just saying, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Look at and Tomas's eyebrows both went up, like in a very
Well,
excited way.
something tells me anti-Semites would absolutely love that idea,
Oh
you know,
yeah, yeah.
being the pragmatists that they are.
Oh man. Gosh. Yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
the secular
Have you
holidays.
guys?
It's like,
Oh, go
what?
ahead. Go
I'm
ahead,
gonna
Christian.
say, well, do you want to transition for us into like maybe some writings around this that we've done
Yeah,
or
yeah.
experienced, or maybe favorite
I
somethings?
I I'd love for us to share, if we've written towards it. Um, I have something I brought that I can share. Or if you haven't written towards it, like have you wanted to? Why? Do you have something that you could share from another writer? And I don't often write a classic poetry, but this one I did last year. Um, and the image that I spun off of it's a very common gosh, what year? I think like 19 it's a menorah Hanukkah in Germany. So there's a menorah in a window, and in the background of that window is the Nazi flag. And it's like right at the rise of all of it. It's a 1930 31 photo.
Right.
And so that image, is so haunting. And here this culture is trying to maintain itself despite this uprising that's happening in the background. And Hanukkah is about holding light in the middle of, war and a storm, trying to maintain your light, right? Is really like, and the miracle that light brings when you bring light, to a room, to darkness, to a place, like what that can transform into. Um, so I normally don't write towards something, but this time I did. It's called Despite Storms and Stray Bullets, and it's a poem. Despite storms and stray bullets, they say there is no light without darkness. But I ask, how much darker can we become when active shooter drills override tornado training and still children shield beneath desks? Reminders of grandmothers swaddling babes behind fake stone walls as proud supremacists marched center streets. And still, the grandmothers held their shamashim, lit candles, and witnessed flames dance without breath or wind. And still, today, darkness snuffs and claws through slang and rap. And followers who believe in elimination, discrimination, but fail to see a miracle or faith so sturdy that still, no matter the night, we trust, we hold hope and each other up in prayer. We psalm our way through valleys and shadows and storms and stray bullets. We follow our grandmothers, and still we boldly place our menorahs ablaze on our sills.
Mm. Yeah,
That was beautiful.
yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah,
Well
that's
done.
the interesting thing of the tradition of lighting a menorah is you're supposed to place it where it can be seen by everyone
Mhm.
in your window. And right
Mhm.
now I have to say it's a little scary to do that.
Yeah, I was going
And
to
I
bring that
can't
up.
imagine how terrifying it might have felt back then, like far
Yeah.
worse, right? And they did it, right? I'm like the bravery that took is haunting. It's haunting.
At
Absolutely.
what point does sharing a virtue become an act of defiance?
That's a great
That's a good
question.
question, but maybe always. I don't know. That would
Yeah.
be,
I
yeah. I
I
mean,
think too there was this point where um I spent like this year really afraid to show up for anything Jewish because maybe we would be targeted as a group, small group here in Idaho. And then I was like, no, showing up is important. Like we have to. We can't. I mean, I don't want to not show up because I'm afraid, right? Is
mhm.
that defiance or stupidity? I'm a single mom, right? And so there's like courage, fear, defiance, like all of it. It's super um convoluted on trying to do the right thing by your soul, you know, by the spirit
Right.
of who you are at the end of the day. Like, how am I honoring my virtues? You know, I guess that's the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. On so many levels, we need to be showing up as much as we could feel comfortable with, and all the more moving forward for sure. But that was awesome. I don't think I've ever written a poem that has anything to blend into the holidays per se. I was trying to think of one, but I guess for myself, I guess I've written more into sort of other holidays. Like I always, not always, but oftentimes, I feel like 4th of July kind of calls out to me. Like the,
I know you write about Fourth of July a lot. Like I've read like a few
that's kind
things
of
of
the, yeah,
yours. Like,
I do.
go
I mean,
ahead.
it's
Sorry.
something that of like, it's a different time of year. Obviously, it's kind of the 180 middle of the summer. It's And it's just this kind of weird, lonely, almost, not necessarily lonely personally, but almost like it always feels really weird to me. I'm walking through neighborhoods I've lived in Boise, and just fireworks smoke hanging in the trees, and just like it's midnight and maybe you're walking home from a party or a barbecue or the bar or just a sort of a fireworks show, and it's just like eerie, and there's something bleak about it. There's some really great stories that I have read set around a story called Pilgrims. I always remember it was set on the 4th of July. It's so profound. And this guy named Dorst, I can't remember his first name even right now, just came to me. But I don't really write about this holidays this time of year as much. I mean, I know that I've had there's a story called Where He's Living Now, and I'm down in San Diego right now with my family, and it was set. That story is set around. It's kind of it's not certainly not me, but it was a younger, sort of me, perhaps a character comes down from Seattle to the sunshine of San Diego to visit his father fairly recently after his mother's died, which is not the case, thankfully, in my life at this point. But he was just here for like Christmas in the San Diego area, and it was a very like what you were saying, Tomas, that idea of like Southern California. I mean, you grew up in the Bay Area, where I did, where it's doesn't feel like Christmas at Christmas generally, but Southern California is even more profound because there's palm trees and it's like, 80 degrees and it's odd. But anyway, so I've written about, that a little bit. I did write a short story called Youth Group that just set on the countdown, moving up to the countdown of Y2K. So it was around New Year's in the year 2000. So there was some holiday stuff in there, but I didn't really, haven't really written into the holidays as much as, sort of some other great writers, so many other great writers. But I did bring a piece to read. Well, I want to talk about one of my favorite stories. It's a little bit too long to read. It's not a real long one, but I would highly recommend it. It's called Augie Wrenn's Christmas Story by a guy named Paul Auster. Maybe you've heard of him. I don't know. He is, he recently passed away actually, but he was a quintessential sort of New York and Brooklyn writer. And they adapted this story. Augie Wrenn's Christmas Story is a character named Augie Wrenn who tells a character based on Paul Auster, who's a writer, kind of a Christmas story. And it's very much not what you would expect. It kind of defers or kind of just the detour, I guess, happens pretty early, and it doesn't really feel like anything like a Christmas story. And it's really sweet and beautiful. And they made it into a movie, kind of expanded into a film called Smoke. Maybe you guys have seen that. It's William Hurt, and like I said, Harvey Keitel plays Augie Wrenn, and it's just a really wonderful story. But it was a little too long to read. But I did want to read something that's sort of holiday-esque, and it's a short story called Sticks. It's a micro piece by our man George Saunders.
I know that one.
It's a brilliant story.
It's a good one.
Honestly, about 500 words tops, probably less.
Yeah. For all the holidays too.
This is the first thing I ever read from him.
Oh, really? And it's
yes.
Yep. It's in his collection 10th of December. And it was published. I don't know where it was actually originally published. I don't have that book with me down here. But I do have a copy of Sticks. I'll read real quick. And it does such a great job as a writer. I really admire it. Just as this, sort of the brevity, the succinctitude, if I can make up a word. It's just very just like boom. And it uses a central object, this post in the middle of a yard, to kind of talk about the holidays and talk about the character's father and the family, and just the idea. This is one thing too, along with the holiday music, the Christmas music, people's decor. Oh my gosh, people just put the weirdest shit in their yards. And of course, there's all these inflatable thingies and these giant things you get at Home Depot, skeletons.
The amount of electricity expended on at Christmas time is the budget side of me.
Just like the Griswold effect. But I mean, here I think Saunders is playing around with that. So it's like this very rudimentary lawn ornament, and it goes like this. It's called Sticks by George Saunders. So every year, Thanksgiving night, we flocked up behind Dad as he dragged the Santa suit to the road and draped it over a kind of crucifix he'd built out of a metal pole in the yard. Super Bowl week, the pole was dressed in a jersey and Rod's helmet, and Rod had to clear it with Dad if he wanted to take the helmet off. On 4th of July, the pole was Uncle Sam. On Veterans Day, a soldier. On Halloween, a ghost. The pole was Dad's one concession to glee. We were allowed only a single Crayola crayon from the box at a time. We were allowed, we were allowed oh my gosh, I tried to read the same line twice. We were allowed a single Crayola from the box, one at a time. One Christmas Eve, he shrieked at Kimmy for wasting an apple slice. He hovered over us as we poured ketchup, saying, "Good enough, good enough, good enough." Birthday parties consisted of cupcakes, no ice cream. The first time I brought a date over, she said, "What's with your dad and that pole?" And I sat there blinking. We left home, married, had children of our own, found the seeds of meanness blooming within us. Dad began dressing the pole with more complexity and less discernible logic. He draped some kind of fur over it on Groundhog Day and lugged out a floodlight to ensure a shadow. When an earthquake struck Chile, he laid the pole on its side and spray painted a rift in the earth. Mom died, and he dressed the pole as death and hung from the crossbar photos of Mom as a baby. We'd stop by and find odd talismans from her youth and his youth arranged around the base. Army medals, theater tickets, old sweatshirts, tubes of Mom's lipstick. One autumn, he painted the pole bright yellow. He covered it with cotton swabs that winter for warmth and provided offspring by hammering in 6 cross sticks around the yard. He ran lengths of string between the pole and the sticks and taped to the strings letters of apology, admissions of error, pleas for understanding, all written in a frantic hand on index cards. He painted a sign saying love and hung it from the pole, and another that said, forgive. And then he died in the hall with the radio on, and we sold the house to a young couple. He yanked out the pole and left it by the road on garbage day.
Good reading.
That
Yeah.
was Mr. Saunders.
Yeah.
It's a great, just the efficiency of the story is so wonderful. It's a whole novel. It's a whole life. So anyway,
Yeah. My hope when I read that, like the 10th time, is that they make it into a movie. I still think like it's movie level detail. Like it's amazing. It could be an hour and 50-minute flick very easily.
Oh, absolutely.
So much packed in there.
I know. And it's just, that idea. And it was, as a writer too, it's just one of those things that as a fiction writer, or really a poet too, but they're just picking those things, the characters, those quirks, of course, are awesome, but just something so offbeat, like just like a weird crucifix that a father hangs stuff on all year round. Because you do see those things. I remember writing a short story years ago about, there was a place in Boise, you guys might remember this, but someone had collected like 150 bowling balls and had them like all in their yard, using them as like weird little sculptures and decor. And then I was just like, I wrote from the perspective of one of the bowling balls. I thought it was
oh my gosh.
It was kind of fun.
Please return to that. That's amazing.
I should. That was in grad school, like 20 years ago. So, but I was just like, I tried to do something. It wasn't, the story wasn't even out in the world, but finding the weird in just the ordinary, he does it so well in many ways, in his writing, George Saunders does, but this one is extraordinary. And it just is really
there's nothing ever ordinary about human condition is the thing George Saunders finds, a way to show us all the time. Absolutely. Hey, Tomas, what about you? Would you bring?
Well, I want to say about that story, the saddest thing for me is that for all of the awareness on the part of the narrator, or keen awareness of the details of what's happening, there's never ever a moment where the implications of the observations are discussed amongst the family, at least not that we ever hear. Everything is externalized without being expressed. And so there's really no emotional interchange. There's no exchange. There's no intimacy. The power is in what's being observed as a passive observer. At no point does a narrator ever say, "Yeah, I see where my dad was going with all this pain." And I said, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" That shit never happens. And it's just letting the pain play out. And this father's really awkward and painful attempts to explain himself to the world and to his family are never reciprocated or acknowledged. And it's that broke me when I read that story.
Absolutely.
And the key to that is the seeds of anger being planted, right?
Yep.
So they can't address it either. The narrator doesn't know how. Nobody knows how. And so it's just, it's just the facts being laid because nobody can tap into their emotional, intelligence on any level. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know that's a great sentence. Is that the transition point is like he moves so quickly through time and space is another good lesson and just event. But we left home, married, had children of our own, found
that's a big title shift in the story right there. Fast forward a decade or two, right?
Yeah, it's like we left home. That's so smart. And if we forget to do that as writers, I do, it's like, oh yes, we can just do that.
No, I need to spend 50 pages on the high school years.
I know. I fall into that. I've been working through a longer manuscript and I'm like,
we can be time travelers. I mean, we are gifted portals, people. That's what writers have. Like, what timeline do you want this in? Go there. Yeah.
Well,
All right, Tomas, what about you?
Yes.
So I don't tend to write about moments, or I don't tend to write about the seasons or the beauty of a day. I tend to write, I think about things that happened during a season or during a holiday or in a beautiful day. And so that's either a talent or a fault that I have in my writing. And so I have what I hope part of a chapter from my novel called Pocho Thanksgiving, and it's bookended with another chapter called American Thanksgiving. And the word pocho here is doing a lot of work because it's a derogatory term used to describe Mexicans who have lost their culture. But it's also been owned by those of us of Mexican heritage who deliberately call ourselves pocho because we acknowledge that we may not be Mexican, but we're definitely not mainstream American, and so we're something different. And so that's what I would also argue is Chicano. But anyways, this is Pocho Thanksgiving, and I deliberately titled the chapter for reasons that I hope will become obvious. I love my family, but at the advanced age of 24, I have finally started to figure out that loving someone isn't always the same as liking them. Take Thanksgiving, for instance, the great American holiday, the day we're all supposed to come together as families and express gratitude for our lives with one another. The one day of the year we're supposed to forget all the real shit that's happening or has ever happened. I'm not sure a normal Thanksgiving is even possible for us. Every year, my mother swears on her grandfather Aurelio's grave that she'll never do another Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house. The expected insults and disrespect from my abuelita and tias too much to bear. But at some point in the weeks leading up, I'll overhear her on the phone, arguing with her half-sisters over whose turn it is to bring the turkey, stuffing, frijoles, cranberry, menudo, pumpkin pie, and various salsas. No one ever volunteers to bring the chile colorado. There's no argument from anyone that my mother's is and always will be the best. Another thing that no one questions is whether there will be tortillas, and lots of them. The very idea that there will not be enough tortillas to feed the entire block is inconceivable. The fight, and there always must be a battle royale every year over this, is about which kinds of tortillas, because everyone has their favorite. How could anyone not know that flour tortillas go with the turkey and corn with the menudo? My abuelita and her second husband, Edgardo, or Eddie, live in an old house in the saddle. Maria divorced my shepherd, plumber, carpenter, mechanic grandfather, Jesus, just before leaving Flagstaff for California. My mother was 5 years old. After arriving in the saddle, Maria met Eddie and had 3 more daughters in quick succession. All of my tias, my mom's half-sisters, live on the same block as Maria and Eddie. I love my aunts, Clarita, Marita, and Sarita. They're scary smart and have tongues that can make the toughest man cry if you cross them. Sometimes it bothers me that they're closer with Cammy than with me, but I guess that makes sense because my sister basically grew up as their little sister. I, on the other hand, always felt like I entered my grandmother's house under the long, dark shadow cast by Bill, my father. None of my aunts or cousins ever asked me about him. But they do love me enough to give me major shit for going to college. Whenever something comes up that's even a little heady, my tias will say things like, "What does the little professor have to say about that?" Or, "Danny, would you care to provide some insight from those books you've always got your nose in?" Or some bullshit like that. In my family, if you're not worth the effort to tear down, you're not worth anything. The moment you act like you're too precious to take it is the moment you have a target on your forehead, or the moment you're totally forgotten. If they've drawn blood, it's because you're family. And then there's Eddie. I rarely speak with him. I can't even make the words grandpa or abuelo come out of my mouth. It's impossible for my mother to hide her feelings toward her stepfather. Her hatred has nothing to do with him punching me in the head for chasing his chickens when I was little. The poison Eddie smeared over my mother's life goes back to when she was a girl. I only learned about this from one of my mom's episodes, the kind where she starts screaming at people who aren't there, the ghosts of the people who wronged her. Sometimes her eyes go wild and I become one of them. Her expression so crazed one night that I ran into my room. She screamed through the locked door, calling me Bill and listing off every evil thing that every man in her life had ever done to her. Eddie's sins were especially bad enough to make me wonder why any woman would ever trust any man. In my abuelita's kitchen, my mother and tias are working around the large table while my grandmother stirs several pots on the stovetop. I stand next to the oven and try to be inconspicuous. I've always felt more comfortable watching my abuelita cook than hanging out with my uncles as they yell at the football game on TV. Without looking up from the stove, my abuelita spoons some rice and beans into a corn tortilla and hands it to me. A silent command for the only man in the kitchen to stop hovering, get the hell out, and let the women do their work. The kitchen looks out over Eddie's cactus garden and the chicken coops. I take a bite of the taco and walk around the table to the kitchen door. "I'll be in the backyard," I say to my mother. "Don't go too far," she says as she stuffs the turkey. "I'll need you to cut some chiles for the salsa in a little bit." "I can do it," my tia Sarita says. My mother wags her finger. "No, deja que lo haga Danny. Let Danny do it. I taught him how to cut them real small." Tia Clarita smirks and elbows Sarita as I hurry past them. The tension is starting earlier than normal this year. I hop down the steps into Eddie's garden. As much as I hate the dude, I have to give him props for keeping the garden tidy. All the fine gravel swept and plants in orderly lines, like a Mexican cactus bonsai garden. The big one hits when I'm almost to the chicken coops. The windows overlooking the garden are open, so I hear the whole thing. "Who was supposed to bring the limon?" Clarita says. "Se le olvidó Alma," Sarita answers. "I did not forget," my mother says too loudly. "Marita was supposed to bring it. She's the one in charge of the menudo. I was too busy with the pavo and chile." "Oh, there you go again, sis," Marita says. "Always acting like you did more work than us." I wince at the clang of some utensil hitting the counter. "Who else here brought a goddamn turkey?" my mother yells. "Yeah, we know you do everything for us," Sarita says. "Remember when she used to cut our hair?" "With mommy's pinking shears," Clarita says. A mean laugh from my other tia, Marita. "You made us all look like poodles. The boys wouldn't talk to us for weeks." "I tried," my mother says slowly. "I did my best. Those were the only scissors we had in the house. You're lucky I didn't use a fucking knife." I lean my forehead against the chicken coop wire and close my eyes. The pain in my mother's voice makes my heart ache, and I welcome the silence coming from the kitchen. Just when I dare to hope that the brush fire will burn itself out, it reignites. "Oh, right, you always did your best," one of my tias says. "Congratulations on doing your best with a gabacho husband." "Yeah, look at how that worked out," says another tia. "And you wonder why Camila turned out so bad." Something heavy crashes in the kitchen. I start back up the kitchen steps, and through the window I see my mother squared up against her three sisters, the turkey still spinning on the kitchen floor. My mother lets loose an unearthly wail, the sound I know from experience as the first step into her temporary madness, the voice that always made me hide in my room and not come out for the rest of the day. I should have let you all play on the fucking freeway, she screams. Pinches cabronas ingratas. I pause on the top step, breathless. Pinches cabrones ingratas. Fucking ungrateful bitches. I push open the door and enter the kitchen. My mother, my tias, and even my abuelita, they all turn to look at me with wide eyes. I don't know what it is. My expression, my clenched fist, my rage for my mother. But for the first time in my life, I feel like the largest, most intimidating person in the room, the person that everyone needs to watch out for. I feel it in the air and space between us. Despite all of that, I've never felt more keenly like I am a weak man among strong women who have been so conditioned to fight that when they turn on one another, their fury is violent enough to sweep everything away. I love them, these women who have had to claw and scratch for everything they've ever gotten. Growing up in their kitchens, listening to their stories and gossip about boyfriends and husbands and children and work and racist bosses they know to never be alone with, there is no man I could ever respect more than them. Not Bill, not my uncles, not my teachers, not even Lawrence, and that's saying something. The women of my family stare at me, and all I can think of is that I've never wanted to be a woman. But I have never wanted to be a man if it meant being so different from them. And right this second, my 200-pound frame filling the doorway, the chasm between me and the women of my family has never felt so wide. Everyone in this kitchen is terrified of me right now. I don't want to be feared. I just want to be their Danny.
Mm. Mm.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good.
Drop the turkey. Yeah. Oh
So
man.
good. It's a great depiction, though, of the complexity of love, in family dynamics, and the history families carry in their
Yeah, because it's
stories.
never just Thanksgiving. Everybody brings in all their histories and ideas about themselves in relation to everybody else who's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really well rendered. Like, seriously, so
I
good.
have this obsession with advice columns,
Really?
and they are
Good.
particularly juicy during the holiday season.
I bet.
Oh
The
my God.
anxiety that getting together for the holidays causes people is literally so dramatic. I can't not read it.
Yeah. That's something we did. Yeah, we hadn't gotten to.
Yeah, let's do like our best holiday
Family.
advice
Oh,
Family.
okay,
really
okay,
quick.
okay.
Go around. Best holiday advice to get through.
Oh,
Um, Christian, best holiday advice
oh
for our
my gosh.
listeners. Come on, you got something.
Well. Oh man, I
Oh,
don't
I
have.
got one. Come to San
Come
Diego
on.
like Christian.
Yeah, that's
Oh
great advice.
yeah, get
Go to the sunshine. If you're like not, I don't know, but then that's feel
follow
we
the
feel displaced.
sun. That's
No, follow the sun. But I will say, I'll just lead into something that with along the lines of family. My parents. I'm in my folks' house right now. I won't say it too loud. They're not going to listen to this podcast, but yeah, I don't think they voted the same way I did, or kind of have a lot of. But one thing I would do around these times is we don't really talk politics, which is nice. Or if we do, I definitely have adjusted my. I figured I was a little scared coming down this year. Not really scared, a little bit feeling a little bit like I don't know that I can hold back, but they're not. They're very reasonable, kind people, and also they're on a little bit of a different page than me on that. But we don't talk about it much, or I try to defer. So I think that's pretty good advice. If sports,
good advice.
watch
Watch sports
watch
and
sports.
defer
Yes, like that's a
defer
pretty,
politics.
what's the
How about
score?
you,
Yeah, it's like,
Tomas? Yeah.
okay, gotta
What's your
change the
best
subject.
advice?
I don't know. I don't know that it's anything too profound, but I think if I've learned anything about the holidays, it's not to chase the ideal.
Mm,
You know,
Mhm.
I've seen too many people be really upset or disappointed or feel like failures if their celebration of the holiday didn't match all of the 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 platonic ideal of that holiday. You know, it didn't have all the trappings, didn't have the right food, didn't have the right feel, didn't have the right lights or decorations. So I guess just don't chase the ideal. if you're going to do Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever celebration that you want to do it your way, do it in a way that feels real, and make the stakes fairly low in terms of adhering to an ideal, and just make it how you and your family want it and need it.
I like it.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the military term, and that's escape and evade. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Run, hide, and fight.
Yeah.
Take cover and do a buddy check. Yeah, that's another really.
Yeah.
Just no, I think for me, like when I've had to show up, the obligatory show ups when I was in not a good situation, I pretended I was watching a sitcom. And that it was super fascinating. Like, I mean, nothing changed except the dread of me showing up inside of me changed, because I was really, I mean, it was like making character sketches, because none of anybody's behavior had anything to do with me. And how they were treating me had nothing to do with me. And so when I could step away and just be a witness to the behavior, it was fascinating. It was just fascinating. And I really felt like I stepped into like a really bad Hallmark sitcom, and it was fantastic. And I kind of miss it, to be honest. But yeah, so
I have a phrase for it already. I have a phrase for this. It's a term. It's a new term. Dramaturgical dissociation.
Oh,
dramaturgical dissociation. Please write that down. We'll use that as a definition. That might be like, yeah,
I'm in love with that concept as a survival mode for the holidays.
It's a survival mode, I think, for anything that feels dreadful, and it's it's an obligation, and it really doesn't have to impact you. Impacting you is a choice, and so it's like doesn't have to like impact me in a negative way. So I thoroughly like had a ball after I was able to like flip that switch.
Was there a particular sitcom you went to in your mind? Was it just like you were just
every year, like for 8 years straight?
But
every year, always. I live one every day. No, no, I think it wasn't that. It was just the characters, were so interesting, and so much of the time I felt like the narrator of a story that just wasn't quite clued in, but yet I was targeted. And I'm like, what, can you tell me why they're mad at me? And they're like, you should know that already, and I'm just, but I don't. And it was that type of thing, and so it became interesting when I removed myself, and it's like, maybe I should know that, and what would that be like? Let me do some guessing, and I could make like a funny list of, what I wore, or what my hair looked like that day. I don't know, but it was just like it became not about me, and not taking it personally shifted the experience to a very more entertaining and less stressful altogether. And that, probably added another 2 years to my lifespan, right? Because stress is just for shit for you. One last question, and then we'll close. And real quick, like, I feel like, and I don't know if you two feel this way, but I feel like that, like, there's a Hallmark holiday formula, and I think that's what I go against when I start reading or watching holiday stuff. It's so predictable. So I love you brought that Saunders piece in, because I'm like, oh yeah, that went against the grain, your piece, Tomas, against the grain, and so I think that's my biggest angst with anything it's like, here's a romance, here's here's a holiday. It feels like the genre template, and I don't like that predictability. I feel like the template is there for you to rub against and do something new with as an artist, right? And and so that's my angst, right? But what about you guys? Like, do you feel like there's this format, it feels like a hero or heroine journey arc going on with a lot of holiday signature literature or movies, flicks?
Oh man, well, there's so much of it, of course, but
except for Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Just saying that song. Okay, true. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that. I mean, Rubbing Against the Template. That sounds like a good title for a good, I mean, that's I just,
A craft
sort of,
class.
I don't know, with dramatological dissociation. Is that what we're doing too?
Dramaturgical dissociation.
Dramaturgical. I can't even read my own writing. I scribbled that down. So anyway, I mean, the one. I mean, I love the strange, the odd. The one of my favorite. I'm just gonna say. I don't really watch a lot of sort of on the nose holiday stuff, though. I did just watch When Harry Met Sally again, which it's obviously not that, but New Year's plays prominently in that. And then there's something about it. It can be kind of magical, and I do the landing point of like It's a Wonderful Life is Christmas, but it's not about that. But one of my favorite holiday scenes of all time is in the movie Trading Places, where Dan Aykroyd is like completely losing his
I was
shit.
thinking about that.
He dresses as Santa Claus and he like goes to it's a long story about the movie, but it's like he and Eddie Murphy trade places, or they're like puppets in these, sort of it's financial institutions sort of, game of, sort of who gets to have what job and thrive. But he's dressed in this Santa suit and he's like drunk as payday, and he's like he still goes to the Christmas party when he's not invited. That's why he dresses as Santa. And then he like starts taking the food, and then he takes this big piece of salmon and he gets his beard and he's trying to eat it. And it's just like, this is like my favorite. It's not a movie about that, but it's like for a holiday scene that sticks in my mind so often. Like,
I agree, and I actually think that I don't know what to call it. That growl, that exclamation that Aykroyd gives out, I think is like the anti ho ho ho. I think it's intended to absolutely tear down this whole concept of Santa being a saintly character when he turns around and just goes.
Yeah,
it's a great scene.
It's so
I feel
good.
like we have a whole new thesaurus and dictionary from Tomas. We have the anti ho 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 and the dramaturgical disassociation, along with the rubbing against the template idea for the next craft class from the three angsty poets.
There we go.
So my recommendations for the audience, anybody who's still listening at this point, would be to please go to the NPR webpage and search out Santaland and listen to Sedaris read Santaland, and you will be introduced to the trials and tribulations and incredibly cynical and beautiful glory of Crumpet the elf. And then also maybe go to YouTube and look up Cheech and Chong and look up Santa Claus. Not Santa Claus, but Santa Claus.
Santa Claus.
And, because Cheech Marin has a Christmas song dedicated to Santa Claus.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh. And I suggest you listen to the Hanukkah song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suggest, I forgot to bring this up earlier, but it's my favorite one of my favorite holiday McSweeney's sort of moment or little snippet. It's called the title is "It's Decorative Gourd Season, Motherfuckers." Like, and I should have read that, and I've actually have a coffee mug that someone bought me, like it says that on it.
I think I saw that at Flying M the other day.
It's pretty awesome, and it is the beginning of it as we go into the end of our podcast. I don't know about you, but I can't wait to get my hands on some fucking gourds and arrange them in a horn-shaped basket in my dining room table. That shit is going to be so seasonal. So it goes on from there. So it's decorative gourd season.
I think like I'm going to ask you guys like to include some of these links. So when we put the podcast up, people can easily find. I'll definitely put, I think the Hanukkah song, Adam Sandler singing it the first time was on SNL. So I'll try to find that link. I don't know I don't know what year that was, but wear your yarmulke. Happy Hanukkah. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy Hanukkah.
There's no Hanukkah.
Yes, there's so much. I mean, we have, this is been fun for sure. But now I have to go, chop up some celery and get ready for the kind of the baked bean salad, or the kind of the green bean, the string bean salad my mom makes every year, where it's like, it's not really a
The
salad.
dramaturgical disassociation
Yeah,
is
so
what we're
I
calling it,
gotta help,
Christian.
stuff the turkey and stuff like that for tomorrow. But in conclusion, I'm gonna say that's a wrap. You've heard our angst with, it did say literary jerks again here. So
I am so sorry.
but I'm gonna just say
I
with
shouldn't do
holiday
this.
jerks, we're the three angsty poets, myself, Christian Winn, here with Tomas, Baiza, Rebecca Evans, and we have plenty more angst to share. So you'll hear from us real soon.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Monday. Tune in.